My name's Tom Bogart. I teach sixth grade science.
Mr. Bogart, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was teaching, and the head custodian came into my room and said, "Hey, Mr. Bogart, turn on the TV. A plane has crashed into the World Trade Center." And at the time, we thought it was just a plane wreck. And then while we were watching it, the second plane hit the tower. And at that point, it became obvious that it wasn't an accident, that it was a purposeful act of terrorism.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was that I couldn't believe that this had actually happened in the United States. And I knew that there would be an incredible loss of life because of that. Disbelief, yeah, it was just an emotional moment for everybody.
Most vivid memory.
The most vivid memory was just that when that second plane impacted and seeing it live, it was one of the most vivid, frightening memories of my entire life.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Milligan and I teach 8th grade math.
Mrs. Milligan, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was actually teaching 8th grade in Hilliard. We had just been in school a week because we started after Labor Day. And we were at lunch and someone had the TV on and we saw the towers come down. And we immediately got an email from our principal for everyone to shut all their TVs off because they didn't want 8th graders, and at that time just 7th graders, to be scared throughout the day. And it was before cell phones, so students did not have any way of knowing, and we were told to be very quiet about it because we didn't want panic in our building. And then I got a phone call for me to come get my son at daycare because they were closing daycare down. My brother-in-law, who was in the Air Force Reserves at the time, was put on high alert, which means he reported to the base and he could get in his plane and in the air in 4 minutes. And I had another good friend who was flying at that moment in United Airlines who had to immediately ground at the closest, safest airport for a big jet.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks and what memories are most vivid?
So my immediate reaction was actually for my husband. He had just separated from the Air Force. And so my immediate reaction was he was going to go back in. And in fact, he got a letter saying you could be called to go back into the Air Force at any time. And he didn't. But my immediate reaction was for him in the Pentagon when it got bombed later, like, oh my God, my husband was just in the Air Force. Like, that could have been him. And then of course, my dad being a veteran and everything like that. So I was thinking about all the veterans, and then just the horror of watching the videos. Like, we were glued to the TV set, and it was just horrible. It was surreal. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie that you're like, this can't really be happening. And it was just very, very sad.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Mr. Smith. I teach 7th grade, IE and math.
Mr. Smith, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was doing pretty much what you guys are doing right now. I was coming to my 8th grade social studies class, and our teacher had the TV on in the room with the news on, and a student walked down and said, "Hey, we just watched the news the whole time," not really having any context or understanding of the gravity of what was happening. And I go in and I see, I think, the second plane hit the tower. And at the time, we just thought it was something happening in a far-off place in New York City, not realizing that it's something that was going to not only tragically kill and affect so many people, but also affect our country for 20 years now, still being affected by it.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks and what memories are most vivid?
Definitely a sense of overwhelmingness, not really know how to feel about it because on TV, some of the scenes are so graphic, and yet you're watching them on TV or on a screen, you feel so removed from them. So I didn't really know how to feel about it. I was the age of many of you, and I bet some of you don't really know what to do with it because maybe you don't have such a connection to it. But the older I got, the more I realized how important and tragic this really event was, and how much it's still in our collective consciousness today.
Do you have a memory that's most vivid?
I remember telling my friend at the end of the day, September 11th, so the attacks happened in the morning. I ended up going to football practice and left for school. And as I was walking home with my friend, I remember saying, I don't think anybody's really going to talk about this in like a week. Once again, I just had no idea. And so over the weeks and months that followed, I realized how dumb that comment was and how, no, this is something that's going to be with us for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I am Mr. Vancho, 8th grade intervention.
Mr. Vancho, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was a freshman in high school, and I remember I was getting ready for gym class, and a lot of my peers were talking about what just took place. So it was kind of word of mouth is how I first heard about it.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks?
It was a very surreal feeling. Felt like it was a movie. I didn't believe it at first, actually, when I first heard about it, until more students started talking about it in the hallways.
What memories are most vivid?
First hearing about it in the locker room, I'll never forget that, where I was. And then that night watching the news with my parents.
Thanks.
Amy McKibben, grade 7 social studies, Berkshire.
Mrs. McKibben, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
Well, I was in the middle of my master's program, and so I dropped my toddler daughter off at her grandparents', and then I came back to my house to get coffee that I had left, walked the dog, and I turned on the news just because, and the Today Show was on, so I saw the Twin Towers fall on the Today Show.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Well, I went to college in New York City and had lived there until 1999, so I knew a lot of people who were living in that area, or I actually knew people who had spouses that worked for Cantor Fitzgerald in particular at the World Trade Center. So my first thought was like horror, especially for the people that I personally knew, but just for what I considered at that time my hometown in general.
Most vivid memory?
Most vivid memory was, I know that after the attacks, I went and picked up my daughter and did not go to grad school that day, and I remember making her bean soup. So even today, the smell or the taste of bean soup kind of stirs some pretty heavy emotions for me.
Thank you.
I'm Justin Dybel. I teach 8th grade science.
Mr. Dybel, what were you doing on September 11, 2001? And how did you find out about the attacks?
I was in college. I was staying in my apartment. I was asleep when I got a call from one of my buddies that woke me up, and he told me that a plane had flew into one of the trade towers, and I didn't believe him at first because I was like, no, I thought he was messing with me, because you're in college and friends mess with you like that, but it was crazy. But that's where I was.
You kind of already addressed the immediate reaction, but what memories are most vivid?
Everything shutting down in Columbus, because I was at Ohio State main campus at that time, and no one was out. Like, you could have walked around. Nobody, the streets were bare. There was no traffic. Everything was shut down. Like, no one walking anywhere.
Hi, I'm Carla Baker. I'm the principal here at Berkshire.
Ms. Baker, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was working. I was athletic director at Marysville Middle School, and I learned of the attacks from one of our office ladies who came to me actually crying.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think my immediate reaction was like I didn't believe it. It was the first time I personally, at age 29, had experienced something like that, like feeling unsafe in the country. But in the end, I feel like even in the same week, I feel like the country came together. So it was also like a feeling of unity as well.
Most vivid memory?
My most vivid memory is probably seeing it on TV for the first time, like all of us gathering in the office and watching it in disbelief. That, and then also worrying. My brother and my dad were in flight during that time, and then I knew they were heading to Florida, so I figured they were fine, but that was a worry.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ciatola. I'm the library aide here at Berkshire.
Mr. Ciatola, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was at another job then. I was on my way into the office, and I was listening to the radio, and so I found out listening to the news on the radio live.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
The most vivid memory was they were speaking to a citizen on the phone live after the first plane had gone into one of the towers. And at that point, we still didn't know that it was an attack. And as he was speaking on the radio, he suddenly screamed out that the other building blew up. And at that moment, I knew that it was an attack.
Thank you.
My name's Julie Johnson, and I'm an office aide at Berkshire.
Ms. Johnson, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was actually a stay-at-home mom at the time, and I had just put my 2 elementary kids on the bus to go to school. And I found out about the attacks from the TV.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction to the attacks were I was terrified because I had just put my kids on the bus, and of course we didn't know what was going on. I ran to the neighbors. We watched most of the newscast that morning together, and my most vivid memory was watching the buildings tilt and then fall, because they said they would never fall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Mr. Lilick. I teach 8th grade math here at Berkshire.
Mr. Lilick, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was in 2nd grade actually, and I did not find out about the attacks until I got off the bus from home. My dad was actually at the bus stop there, and he kind of walked me home and kind of talked to me about it. At that time, as a 2nd grader, I mean, I was 8, 9 years old. Didn't really comprehend what was going on, didn't really understand it until really many years later. But I knew it was kind of serious because for the most part, I walked home from school on my own when I got off that bus. My dad would never pick me up. He would always just be at home waiting for me. And I knew it was kind of out of the ordinary when he showed up and he was kind of walking me back.
What memories are most vivid?
I would say when my dad was there at the bus stop, it was completely new to us. Our school kind of kept us in the dark. They didn't broadcast anything. They didn't show us anything. But kind of just talking to my family members down the line. My brother was a senior in high school, and he had a much different story because he was kind of had understanding of what was going on in the world, and all the TVs were on at the high school at that time. So just kind of nothing in the moment, but just talking to my family about it, and as time went on to kind of see their reaction to it as well.
Thanks so much.
My name is Mr. Schaefer, and I'm the school psychologist here at Berkshire.
Mr. Schaefer, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was in middle school, actually, in 2001. I was in 7th grade, and I found out about the attacks when our secretary came in to talk to my home economics teacher, and the secretary was crying. The home economics teacher began crying, and they rolled out the old TV and started playing the news, and we watched kind of the events unfold.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think fear was the first question was, oh no, is this going to happen everywhere? You know, are we in danger here? And I was up in Cleveland at the time, and just complete confusion. You know, what on earth could it possibly be an accident? What's next? And the most vivid memories, I do still kind of picture the teachers crying, and I remember going home and continuing to watch the news with my mom at home, and she was rattled, and she's not a woman that's typically rattled, and I remember feeling that, you know, you get the adults that you look to for comfort in your life, and having her be nervous and scared really, you know, kept me that way the rest of the day for sure.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna Srivastava. I teach 8th grade science.
Hi, Mrs. Srivastava. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was a sophomore at the University of Dayton, and I was actually really sick with mono. So I was sleeping in, and my housemates came and woke me up and I went into the living room to watch TV, and I just remember our apartment being silent, which an apartment full of college girls is rarely silent. And we just stared at the TV in shock.
You kind of addressed this, but I'll ask it anyway. What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think I was just in disbelief. Nothing in my lifetime had ever happened to make me question my safety in the US. And I think that was a very vulnerable day as Americans. And I think we were just absolutely shocked at first when the planes hit the building, but then watching the towers fall was one of the most unreal moments of my life.
Thank you. Justin Emmerich. I teach 8th grade American history at Berkshire Middle School.
What were you doing on September 11th, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So on September 11th, I was home from college. Ohio State started later. We were on a quarter system at that time, so I didn't go back to school until late September. So I was home. I had a job, but I was living at home in the summertime. And my father had recently retired, so my dad and I were just sitting on the couch watching the news. We did that a lot of mornings together. And Today show's on. I mean, I can remember it exactly when it happened. They went to a report that the first tower was on fire, and maybe it was a crop duster biplane. Nobody really knows at that time. And then live, we saw that second plane come in, and we saw it, and I think we were both in shock of what was about to happen, and then the explosion. And at that point, we knew the world had changed.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what is your most vivid memory?
I looked at my father and I said, the world's never going to be the same. We were shocked. We knew that this was deliberate. It was no longer, it was an accident. This was deliberate. We started talking about terrorists, and we started talking about maybe what country could have attacked. So that idea of a country that was about to be at war was a reality for me. Most vivid would be throughout that whole day. I ended up going to work at noon, and I worked noon to 9 at that time. And I remember at 6 o'clock-ish that night, I worked at a car dealership right on 23. I remember walking out of that car dealership and not seeing any traffic on 23. Really imagine that, 23, no cars. We could literally walk into the middle of the road and not see one car on the road. Look up, not one plane in the sky. So just that eerie feeling, that really sticks out to me. The other thing that really sticks out to me is the days that followed and the unity that was taking place all across the country. You couldn't drive down a neighborhood without seeing a flag. You couldn't go into a business without seeing a flag. You had this really patriotic feeling that we were going to get through this, and we were going to overcome this, that these groups of people were not going to steal the freedoms that we hold so dear.
I'm Mr. McCord. I teach 8th grade American history.
Mr. McCord, what were you doing on September 11, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was in a loading dock working a part-time job at Worthington Mall. And I was lifting boxes, and there's a TV back there, and that's when some of the guys back there were like, "Can you believe what's happening?" And that's how I found out that a building had been hit. They thought a plane, if I recall, but they weren't sure.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks?
I was in shock. I was in more shock once I saw it on TV, because like the TV kept looping in basically the plane flying into the building. But it seemed like an accident. Like that's how the newscaster was saying, like it was an accident.
What memories are most vivid from that day?
The fire shooting out the other side of the building. What hit you real hard too is as you were watching, the first building got hit, and you're just like, oh my gosh, can the people get out? And that's what they're talking. And then the second building gets hit, and that's what really kind of blew everybody away. And then of course you're thinking, oh my gosh, can this get any worse? And then both buildings tumble down, and it was just very shocking. No one was talking about at first what had happened, and then the idea that the country's under attack. And at that point, and I can't remember kind of timeline, but then other places were getting attacked, the Pentagon, and plane crashed, I think, in Pennsylvania, I believe. Nobody really knew what to say because nobody knew what was going on, but it's like, oh my gosh, this country is being under attack. And we didn't think for any reason.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ms. Thomas here at Berkshire, and I teach technology.
Ms. Thomas, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was teaching second grade at the time, and I vividly remember that day because we didn't know anything about what was going on, and we had administrators come and tap on our doors and kind of pull us out of our classrooms and tell us what was going on. And I just remember that I felt scared, and I felt like I couldn't keep in touch with what was going on because we couldn't watch anything in a second grade classroom, couldn't have the news on or anything like that, and you were just wondering what was happening now.
So you kind of addressed your immediate reaction. What memory of that day is most vivid?
I think the biggest memory of that day is in between classes, we were watching the footage, and just the fear and the apprehensive feeling that you felt, and it felt like there was a big weight on us, and you really felt sad, you were really emotional, and you couldn't show it to your kids. And I remember that parents were coming and picking up their kids left and right because they had the same feelings, and they had heard what was going on, and they wanted to keep their families safe, and we wanted to keep the kids safe, and it was just this emotional roller coaster, really.
Thank you.
My name's Alan Carpenter. I'm the head custodian at Berkshire Middle School.
Alan, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was actually a stay-at-home dad at that time, and I was turning on the TV to watch a program. I can't remember which one it was, and of course it was on a local channel, and that's when I saw the first plane fly into the World Trade Center.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
The first thing I did was I called my dad and asked him if he was watching TV and were we under attack.
Most vivid memory?
Actually seeing it on the television and not believing what I was seeing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna Haskins, 8th grade science teacher.
Hi, Ms. Haskins. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was a junior in high school, and I remember we were sitting in our government class, and all of the teachers were running from classroom to classroom telling everybody to put on the TV, and we started to just watch after the first tower was hit. And I just remember everybody being really quiet, not knowing what was going on, a lot of confusion, because at that moment we didn't know the whole story.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was just confusion, and then when the second plane actually hit was when it moved to that we were very scared and nervous for the people that were in New York, and then what was going to happen next. I remember a big conversation from where I lived. They were talking about who or what other locations would be attacked, and one was which we started talking about with the Wright State Air Force Base.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Whiteside. I teach 6th grade social studies.
Mr. Whiteside, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
Ooh, I wasn't teaching then. I had already left and gone to work. My wife called and said, there's something happening on the news that you need to come home and watch, and please hurry. So I did. I got home and then watched the second tower fall, and I was just shocked at that. It brought to mind Pearl Harbor sneak attacks, and no one at the time knew what would happen next. It was kind of a frightening, alarming kind of experience.
You've already covered your immediate reaction, but what memories of that day are most vivid?
Memories of that day. One of the neighbors came over in hysterical tears. She had friends who lived near Shanksville, Tennessee, and after hearing that that plane had gone down, she just could not pull it together. So I knew at the time that someone had to be strong for other people, and my wife and I both did that. Oh my gosh, I think that woman stayed with us for 5 or 6 hours that day. So my immediate reaction was thinking about other people, what they're going through, and the loss of life was certainly unknown at the time, but just a really alarming kind of reality for me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Justin Mellon. I'm the 8th grade intervention specialist.
What were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So on September 11th in 2001, I was in 5th grade at Wyandotte Run Elementary here in Olentangy School District. For me, it was kind of a shock and not a typical normal school day, because I noticed a lot of my classmates were getting pulled from school. So I really wasn't aware of what was going on, just that it was weird that classmates were leaving school. When I got home from the bus is when I found out with my parents. We saw all the news clips on TV, and they kind of talked me through what was happening. So that's how I had found out.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
For me, just being really shocked, like not really comprehending as a 5th grade student what was really happening. My parents were trying to kind of fill in, what the implications and the impact of this had in the world, not only here in the United States. And the most vivid thing I remember is the towers burning when the plane struck from the video on the news, and then seeing the towers fall.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Ebersole, and I teach 8th grade English.
Ms. Eversole, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was driving from Columbus to my hometown in Dayton, and I was listening to the radio, which was a New York radio station, and was just listening for entertainment, and actually heard him transition from laughing and having a good time to being really scared. And as I was going down 70 to get to Dayton, traffic completely stopped on the interstate, and everyone got out of their cars, and about 6 F-16 bombers flew right over Interstate 70, which was scary.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Living in Dayton, it's really close to Wright Pat Air Force Base, and we kept hearing all of these really loud noises, which later news reported that it was just the sound barrier being broken by the fighter jets. But at the time, we thought that places all around us were being bombed. And thinking of what we were seeing and what we were learning, anything seemed possible. And so it was a really uncertain and a really scary 24 hours. But towards the end of that 24 hours, the next day, so many people were putting up American flags, and you couldn't drive through town without seeing American flags everywhere. And it really was a time that went from being completely terrifying to feeling like we were one united country.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Kennedy, and I am one of the art teachers here.
Ms. Kennedy, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was a sophomore in high school. I was in my math class when I found out. My teacher was running around the room freaking out because her child was on a plane going to New York that morning, and she was really worried that they were on that plane, or one of the first planes that hit the World Trade Center. So that's how I found out.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I was shocked. Nothing like this had ever happened in my lifetime. I remember watching the second tower fall, and I mean, my class was just silent. That's all we did for the whole day, was watch the news. It just didn't seem real. I didn't think that anybody could ever do that, something like that, to our country. But there was also like a sense of pride for our country, and everybody came together, and we all wanted to rebuild, and it was a very weird day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Mrs. Phoebus, and I teach 8th grade American history.
Mrs. Phoebus, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I actually had just dropped my children off at elementary school, and I'd gone to Walmart to get my oil change, and because I didn't want to spend any money, I was walking through the TV section, and that's how I got it. I saw the planes going in, and I was shocked.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
And my immediate was to run to the front of the store because you can't get any service in Walmart, and to call my husband and ask him what the heck was going on. I didn't believe I saw what I actually saw, and I felt like he might had a little bit more insight connected to the military.
Most vivid memory?
just the overwhelming sense of nobody knew who was going to be next, and everyone, no matter if you lived in a small town, a big town, anybody, they just wanted to get their family together and be safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brett Thompson. I teach 8th grade math.
Mr. Thompson, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
So on September 11th, 2001, I was in 6th grade. And we were actually in 6th grade social studies, I believe. A teacher ran in, told our teacher to turn on the TV, and we watched basically the whole thing.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks?
I was in 6th grade, so I was kind of naive, trying to understand what happened. So, didn't really know until I got home and saw my parents' reaction.
What memories are most vivid?
The most vivid memory I have is watching the towers fall on TV in 6th grade social studies.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Reinhardt. I teach 6th grade science, team 602.
Mr. Reinhardt, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was teaching at Liberty Middle School. It was the first year that it had opened. I was teaching 6th grade reading and language arts, and we had no idea about it. We had a meeting with parents that day, so they came in, and the first thing they said to us was, "Have you heard what's happened?" And so that's when they told us about it. We turned on the TV and found out. We were shocked, absolutely shocked. And then parents started coming and picking up kids. And we taught through the day, but just try to figure out what was going on.
What was your immediate reactions to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
So my immediate reaction was obviously shock, sadness, and then I just remember the world shutting down. Like everybody, my husband and I had to run out for something, I forget what it was that night, and no one was out. And everybody's watching TV. It seemed very solemn. And it was like just the world shut down, just in shock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Mr. Tuttle. I teach 8th grade math and algebra here at Berkshire.
Mr. Tuttle, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was a senior in high school, and I took college classes at Akron U, and I had the morning off, so I met with my mom and my brother for breakfast at Friendly's, if anybody remembers Friendly's. Great place for ice cream. But I was driving to high school at that time, and because I let my brother borrow my car a couple months before, he broke the antenna off of my car, which nobody really knows about these, so I couldn't listen to the radio other than one station. So Howard Stern, who was, they would call him a shock jock radio personality, was the only radio station I got, and driving to school, I heard him start announcing of the planes going into the World Trade Center towers, and as I was pulling up to my high school, they started lowering the flag to half-mast. Do you need me to keep going? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks? What memories are most vivid?
It was it was scary, to be honest with you, because we had so many questions. We didn't know what was going on. Without the technology that we had now and everything, we're in school, and sure, we can wheel the TV in to our classroom, but there wasn't a whole lot of information, and you started hearing rumors and things. Yes, we had cell phones, but it's like playing the game of telephone when you're a kid, is that you hear all these different things that are happening and you don't know when it's going to end.
And memory that's most vivid?
It was the initial of spending the time with my brother and my mom, and realizing that a lot could change now. Being a senior, having some friends that have already that they wanted to enlist immediately that day for when they graduated, and just a lot of the unknown.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mrs. Hendershot, and I teach sixth grade social studies.
Ms. Cindershot, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was actually working at the Franklin County Courthouse. I was working for 2 judges, and we were sitting in the judges' chambers, and our court reporter came in and said, "You need to come to my office and watch this." There were about 8 of us who sat around a little black and white TV about this big and watched the plane go into the first tower. Immediately we were put on lockdown, and we were extremely scared. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know if there were going to be more attacks, and we just continued to monitor it very closely.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think at the time there was a lot of confusion. We weren't sure exactly what happened, why it happened, what was going to happen next. Later on, they wound up shutting the courthouse down because they were afraid anywhere around the country that there might be another attack in different locations, especially after the plane went down in Pennsylvania. So we all actually gathered together, and we went to a restaurant that had shut down. They had closed the courthouse and went to a restaurant and shut down, and just watched TV for hours upon hours and just trying to process what happened. And still to this day, I just remember sitting there with my mouth open, just trying to figure out like who would do this and what would why did it happen?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shawnee Placo, and I teach 7th grade math at Berkshire Middle School.
Mrs. Placo, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I actually was driving to the gym with my daughter, and I overheard on the radio the attacks that were going on. And at that time, we weren't sure they were attacks. It was just a random airplane crash.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was this must have been a mistake. This couldn't have possibly been on purpose. And when we found out with more information that it was on purpose, I was absolutely devastated. I'd just gotten out of the military at the time, and I had thought at that moment it was a decision to possibly go back in to go help with the cleanup crew.
What memories do you have that are most vivid from that day?
shock, and then severe sadness of that day. And it's even now it's hard not to be really upset about that.
Thank you.
Mr. Glassburn, 7th grade science.
Mr. Glassburn, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I had just started off teaching. It was my second year teaching. I just dropped off my kids to their special that day. I was teaching 4th grade. I just happened to have a custodian who popped in my room and said, hey, you might want to turn on the TV. And I did, and it was just in time to see the second plane hit the tower.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
First of all, I think a lot of confusion, which then turned into fear, was the main one. Just kind of trying to figure out and make sense of everything. I remember a lot of everything just seemed to be very somber and silent. You know, it was a beautiful fall day, but there's just something that just wasn't right. Even out on the road, there weren't many cars. You know, it just everything was just quiet, and I'll never forget that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Eric Hill. I'm a 7th grade intervention specialist here at Berkshire.
What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
Well, I was a substitute teacher at the time, but I didn't take an assignment that day, so I was actually getting ready to take my cat to the vet for a regular checkup when I turned on the news and saw the North Tower on fire. And at the time, it was the Today Show, and they were just talking about how they thought there was some sort of plane accident.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I was completely disoriented by it because the newscasters were really confused as to what was going on. So they just had the camera showing the tower on fire. And then the next thing that I remember was I then witnessed in real time the South Tower getting hit by a passenger-sized airplane, which just totally blew my mind. And at that point, I knew something really crazy and really scary was going on.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Emma Hinkle, and I teach 7th grade English for Team 702.
Hi, Ms. Hinkle. What were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was in my 8th grade science class, and we found out about the attacks because a classmate of mine, his dad called from one of the towers and said it was just hit by an airplane.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
So when the first plane hit, we kind of thought it was just like a fluke thing, freak accident. And our teacher turned on the TV after our classmate got that call from his dad, and we watched the second plane hit live. And I just remember thinking, what does this mean? I'm not old enough to process this. And so it was nice because my parents and I, we had a great conversation at home that night. And it really brought to light a bunch of different topics going into high school that I need to be made aware of.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marcus Gischel, head custodian.
Hi, Marcus. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was delivering produce while the first attack happened, and I heard it on the radio as I was moving from hospital to hospital.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I kind of went blank. It was such a devastating occurrence. I really had no idea what to think at that time.
Most vivid memory?
The most vivid memory is when I made it home that afternoon. Watching the two towers fall was just out of this world, almost unreal.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott Gray, and I'm an intervention aide here at Berkshire.
Mr. Gray, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
On that particular day, it was on a Tuesday. It was a beautiful, gorgeous day. I was on my way to a social studies class of all things. I heard about it from one of our secretaries. My first reaction was that it was an accident. Perhaps a mishap in air traffic control. As the day went on, panic, rumor, fear spread throughout the school. Shortly thereafter, all of our classes were watching CNN and other media outlets to watch this important event unravel.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My first memory of this is I was in complete shock. This was my version of what my parents described as Pearl Harbor. Shock, disbelief, that it could even happen here in the United States. Ironically, I visited those two towers 2 years earlier, and I just couldn't believe that something like that could happen.
Most vivid memory?
Most vivid memory was how that event really changed the United States forever in terms of security, how we view the world, how other people view us, and more importantly, how vulnerable the United States can be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Holly Califf, and I teach 7th grade science.
Ms. Califf, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was actually sitting in my children's literature class at Ohio Dominican when they made an announcement that they were closing campus for the day and there had been an attack on our country.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I was actually pretty scared because my brother was flying from Milwaukee to DC that day. So I was frantically calling my parents, trying to get a hold of my brother just to make sure everything was okay. Memories that were most vivid, I think, were watching CNN and the news networks and looking at all of the different perspectives of it, because I was flipping back and forth trying to figure out what was going on and what was happening. I think right now I was just at that point I was in a state of panic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Poff. I teach 7th grade science here at Berkshire Middle School.
Mr. Poff, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was in Mr. Dakin's sociology class. I was a junior in high school at the time. And the way I found out, the way all of us did in my class, was the teacher next door didn't have a class, and he came over and basically said, something's going on with the World Trade Centers.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was, this is a terrible accident. I didn't understand. I mean, I was 17 years old, 16 years old, I guess. So, I mean, I didn't comprehend how crazy and, terrible it really was.
Memories that's most vivid?
The first tower coming down. It's probably the first thing that comes to my mind. I was in a different class at that time. We were watching it on TV, so.
Thank you.
Morgan Nagel, Berkshire Middle School, assistant principal.
What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was a freshman in college at Miami University, and I was sleeping in before my first college calculus exam, and I woke up to a phone call from my mom about 9:45 asking me if I had seen anything that was happening on the news. In fact, I hadn't, obviously, because I was sleeping in. So I turned on the TV and kind of started to listen and hear what was happening.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I was in awe and just kind of struck with the severity of what was happening. I was kind of confused. I was like, what is happening? And then I was like, do I go to class? Like, what am I supposed to do? And then my most vivid memory is sitting in our college dorm, just groups of students, just watching in silence, basically, like, how is this even happening right now? So just kind of coming together as a group and experiencing it together.
Thank you.
I am Mr. Craig, 7th grade IS.
Mr. Craig, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was a junior in high school, and I walked into choir class at the beginning of choir class, and a couple students were talking about it, overheard them, said that a plane had just hit one of the towers, and that was the first I had heard about it.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was disbelief. I thought maybe my friends were confused, or, were trying to start a rumor or something. Just wasn't something that you hear of. I think probably my most vivid memory was the next class that I had was Spanish. And with my favorite teacher, she was the most positive person that I've maybe ever met. And we sat down, we were watching the news, and she was very somber. And that was when I knew that this was a day unlike any other day that I was probably ever going to experience. So, yeah, it was a rough day all around, but it was, it was somber, I would say, overall.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Tyler Little, Mr. Little. I teach 7th grade math.
Mr. Little, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was a senior in high school. I was actually in my first period weight training class, and we heard the announcement over the radio. As we were lifting, the majority of us were shocked at first, and then we sat there for the rest of the period and just listened to the radio. As soon as that period was over, we switched classes and then spent the rest of the day in that same class just watching the news and trying to keep up to date on what the situation was and how it was evolving.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Total shock, fear, and then just sadness for everything that was occurring. The entire day we didn't do anything except for watching the news, and that's just what it was, and nobody knew how to react, and nobody knew what to do at that point.
What's your most vivid memory from that day?
Just being in a class with a group of seniors, some of us crying, some of us trying to get a hold of parents, some of us leaving, going home, and it was just an absolute surreal experience.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Ramey. I'm 6th grade math on Team 603.
Hi, Ms. Ramey. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was actually at Shanahan Middle School in Mr. Bogart's science class, the Mr. Bogart downstairs, and a janitor came in our room and told him to turn the TVs on, and we kind of just watched, and that's how we found out.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
We were just sitting there in class, and everyone was just kind of like silent. We were scared. Kids were getting picked up by their parents during the school day. It was just a very eerie feeling, and everyone felt just like, we just felt unsafe. We didn't know what was gonna happen next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Bruning. I am the Guidance and Athletic Secretary here at Berkshire Middle School.
Hi, Ms. Bruning. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
It was an interesting day for me. I was working for one of the larger banks in Columbus at the time, and I was a corporate trainer. And I had clients in from out of state, and I was training them on an application. So I was in a closed room, no windows, no TVs, and we took a break, and one of the customers came back and said that a plane hit one of the Twin Towers. So my mind immediately thought just a little prop plane hitting a building. I couldn't expand it beyond that. Then they came back and said that another plane hit, and then another plane hit the Pentagon.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks?
At that moment, I could not wrap my mind around the severity of it and what it actually meant. And I didn't actually know until I was driving home that day, and on the radio I heard that the Twin Towers had fallen. I didn't even know they had fallen until about 4:30 in that afternoon, and it was devastating.
What memories most vivid from that day?
Just the overall sadness of what had happened and what had happened to our country. And I mean, I could cry today thinking about it, that the people that were in the buildings, I couldn't get past everybody that woke up that morning just like I did, went to work just like I did, and are not going home to their families. Thousands of people. I couldn't get past that.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Morelli. I'm 7th grade social studies teacher.
Mr. Morelli, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was in second grade, And I was just hanging out in music class when my music teacher came in and was very distraught and expressed some stuff had gone down in New York.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I didn't really know what was going on at the time. I got picked up later in the day from school by my parents, and I proceeded to sit and watch the news for the rest of the day, watching as everything kind of unfolded with the rest of the world.
What memory is most vivid?
Basically just sitting in my lazy boy at home, watching TV, watching the airplanes go into the building over and over and over again.
Thank you.
Mrs. Glassburn, 7th grade English.
Mrs. Glassburn, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was teaching 2nd grade at Wyandotte Run. It was my 2nd year of teaching. And I had just dropped my sweet little 2nd graders off for their first morning special, which was music. And I was on my way back to my room. I had just gotten back to my room and I had my radio on and it was playing, and the news had cut in saying that there had been a plane that had hit one of the towers.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I don't think I thought maybe it was like a joke. I thought, what? Or maybe like how awful, like that a plane could go that far off track, thinking it wasn't on purpose. I remember the sky was really, really blue that day. Just was so beautiful. It was a gorgeous day. But it was really weird because there were no planes flying around. There was nothing in the air. It was really, really quiet, which was odd to not hear or see anything in the air. Almost like it was just silent. It was just really shocking. And that night, Mr. Glassburn and I went to a service to kind of like, after everything came out about what had happened, just to kind of like send thoughts and prayers out to the families. And I just remember thinking while we were sitting in that service, like, these poor kids who were in here, they shouldn't be having to sit and, worried about this. They should be out playing on this beautiful day.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mr. Schreiber. I teach 7th grade math here at Berkshire.
Mr. Schreiber, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I remember I was in sophomore year. I was in class in Mr. McCann's science room, and a person came in saying that we had been bombed, which was incorrect, but we had a student runner. And that's how I initially found out before we found out more news. And what happened after that was the TV came on, but we could not get the picture for some reason, and we could hear the sounds, and it was just chaos. That's what I remember most.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My most immediate reaction was I thought we were at war. I had never lived through a war, but when the moment it happened, I believed that a country had attacked us in a way where there was going to be a draft, and I had friends. I had a brother who was 18 years old. He was going to be drafted in the Army. That's what my immediate reaction was.
What's your most vivid memory?
My most vivid memory was when I got home, because my English teacher would not let me watch like when it was going on. I went home and I turned on the news. I was by myself before my family got home, and watching the towers again and again come down just absolutely blew my mind. Like knowing that thousands of people were dying and I was watching it. That was my biggest memory.
Thank you so much.
I'm Mrs. Kelly. I teach choir here at Berkshire.
Hi, Mrs. Kelly. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was sitting in my first period architectural drafting class, my junior year of high school, and our principal came over the announcements and said there's been a great national tragedy. A plane has flown into one of the World Trade Center towers in New York City, and we all were like, what? A plane flew into a tower somewhere? So we had a commons area and they turned on the televisions in the commons area. So I wandered out of my class into the commons area to kind of check it out on the screens. And as I walked out was when the second plane flew into the tower. And I remember thinking, wow, this is so terrible. And then the second I saw that second plane, I just like, oh my gosh, like my jaw dropped and I started crying and there were tons of people just hugging each other. It was unbelievable, and things just unfolded from there throughout the day.
So you kind of addressed it, but I'll ask it anyway. What was your immediate reaction to the attacks? And what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was I felt like the place that I considered so safe, my home, my country, didn't feel safe at all anymore. And I was overwhelmingly scared about what was coming and what was happening. I wanted to be close to my family, but everything kind of felt chaotic. I had friends whose families were in New York and across the world and they couldn't reach them because cell phone towers went down and everything. It was very, very scary. Probably the most vivid memory I have is my dad came to pick us up that evening, and I remember we sat in the car and just sat there and stared at each other and then hugged each other and cried. And my dad doesn't cry, but my dad we were both just bawling, crying, like just felt like the bottom had dropped out, and I never knew if I would feel safe again.
Thank you.
I'm Mr. Jordan. I'm one of the new assistant principals here at Berkshire Middle. And I'm excited to be a Sentinel.
Mr. Jordan, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I'll never forget it. I was a junior in high school, and I went to my third period class, and it was a social studies class, and our teacher was a former CIA agent, and somehow she found out. I don't know if it was the internet, but we ended up actually watching some of the coverage on the TV in the classroom.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think it was just a lot of like confusion at that moment. We didn't really know what was going on. We kind of knew what had happened, but we didn't know why. It was just a lot of confusion. And I think the one thing I most vividly remember is we were watching TV when we saw the second plane fly into the tower.
Thank you.
I'm Caitlin Baker, and I'm the literacy specialist.
Ms. Baker, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was sitting in class. I was a junior in high school, and we found out because word got through the school that the first plane had hit, and so then we turned the TV on in our class.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was in shock and kind of confused, not really understanding what we were watching on the TV. I remember sitting with my family and then being glued to the TV the rest of the day once we got out of school. And my most vivid memory would be watching it. We turned the TV on in my class just in time to see the second building go down, get hit and then go down. We watched it all crumble on TV.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madonna Wheeler, and I am the math specialist here at Berkshire Middle School.
Hi, Ms. Wheeler. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
Well, I was working at Liberty Middle School and teaching 6th grade math, and I was in a team planning meeting, and our principal, Gina Williams, came by and said, "Have you guys seen what's going on?" And of course we hadn't, because we had been teaching, and we immediately turned on the TV and saw what was going on. And I think what's most crazy is that we had to go right back into the classroom after seeing this and pretend like nothing was going on, so we didn't worry the students.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Watching that second airplane go into because they had that on video, watching that crash because you thought the first one was an accident, like some catastrophic accident, but when the second one goes in, you know that you are under attack.
What's your most vivid memory?
I think something that stands out to me is going home and watching, where we were sitting on the floor with our backs against the couch, which is unusual for us. But I had 2 small kids at the time, and one of them was 2, and he's this fat, cute kid, and he has no idea what's going on. And he's just like running and kicking the football, and we are like watching people jump out of buildings, because at that point they were like retelling everything that had happened to that day. And so you were seeing people jumping out of buildings, and you were seeing different angles of the plane crash, or of the plane crashing into the building. So it's just that juxtaposition of having this wonderfully innocent 2-year-old boy running around laughing, and we're trying to be present for him, and yet there's this awful thing going on.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Mr. Neer, I'm 8th grade intervention specialist.
Mr. Neer, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was working for Franklin County Child Support when I kind of just graduated college, and I was listening to the Howard Stern radio show, and they said that they thought a helicopter had attacked the Trade Center, or ran into the Trade Center, and then they got video from CNN that showed that 2 planes had actually hit, and that's really what I remember the most. Just people, a lot of chaos going on in the building, and so that's where I was when I found out.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Memories that are most vivid are probably the moms leaving, because I worked with a lot of single parent families, and their moms were really running to get their kids from daycare and schools because we were really felt like we were literally under attack. I went home, and gas prices were up to $5 a gallon. People were lined up for miles to get gas, so I really felt like it was like we were under attack.
Most vivid memory?
Most vivid memory is probably just watching the sheer shock of the planes just hitting the building. That would be the most vivid memory.
Thank you.
My name is Meredith Ward. I teach 7th grade language arts.
Miss Ward, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was a junior in college, and I remember right before leaving for class, I turned on the news, saw it on the Today Show, actually, and immediate reaction was that possibly there was some sort of jet engine failure of the aircraft. We didn't immediately think it was a terrorist attack until moments later when we realized the other 2 planes had gone down.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Memories that are most vivid would be just sitting around that night and then the following week with roommates talking about how shocked we were, pretty much in disbelief and not knowing what the future would hold for our country.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mr. Verostek, school counselor here at Berkshire Middle School.
Mr. V, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I remember I was in high school. I was a sophomore. I was in English class. We were reading a book. Actually, I remember the book. It was Into the Wild. And all of a sudden, I heard some kids running down the hall. The teacher went out, and then I remember the teacher talking to other teachers, and then she came back in tears. She really didn't tell us what was going on, but we were starting to wonder. And then a couple minutes later, I went to study hall, and they had it on the TV, and I remember just staring at the TV, watching what was happening.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think the first thing I was thinking of is one, unbelievable. It was. I was scared. I had a hard time comprehending what was going on. And I remember watching the TV, and by the time I watched the TV, the tower fell. So then it was even more like this can't be happening. I remember thinking over and over it must have been fake. And then I remember throughout the day, and one of the most vivid, I remember going into my math teacher, one of my favorite teachers. His desk was turned around. He was really charismatic and talked. He turned around and he was in tears, didn't say one word. He was a veteran, and he was just didn't want to speak. He just said, "Come sit down," and then we just sat there. That was one of my vivid memories because he did not say one word. And I remember just real quick that Friday we played a football game, and I remember my coach, his pregame speech was nothing to do with the other team. It was all about us going out and proving that we could continue our lives and to go against terrorism and those things. That was kind of the speech that we were the United States and we're a great country and we're going to go out there and play the game we love because of the country we love and things like that.
Thank you.
I'm Mr. Baker, and I teach 7th grade math.
Mr. Baker, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I do not remember what I was doing at the time of the attacks. So the first time I found out about the attacks, I was probably in 5th grade or 6th grade in history class, and it was honestly kind of horrific when I saw those images and we saw a video in history class. I was right around this age in middle school, and it was absolutely horrifying, and just it was kind of eye-opening.
Because how old were you in 2001?
I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was your immediate reaction in 6th grade when you saw it, and what memories of those videos that you watch are most vivid?
Just the one of the main things that I remember, just the people on top of the building or above the fires, and just the plane kind of crashing in and the building falling is just really kind of burned into your memory ever since you see it. And I have no memory of when it actually happened. So even seeing it in 6th grade, it's still burned into your memory, and going to visit that in New York is really, it's kind of quite of an experience.
Thank you.
Melissa Chan, Library Media Specialist.
What were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was on one of the Ohio State bus routes. I was picking up books in advance to the term being started, and it's normally a very quiet ride, but it was even more so because everybody was leaning in, listening to the radio that was being broadcasted on the bus.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I was, first off, very confused. I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do. My father was trying to get a hold of me, telling me to come home because I was partially living at home still at that time because term hadn't started. So it was very confusing. And then once all the images started showing on the news, it felt very much unreal. I guess that's really what, and it still is very unreal to watch those images again or see them.
What memory is most vivid?
I would probably say the destruction afterwards, people running away from the ones from the Twin Towers. Obviously we heard more about the Pentagon in Pennsylvania later, but those were the ones that stuck out to me, was all the ash from the tower covering everybody as they were running.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Madam Harris. I'm a 7th and 8th grade French teacher here at Berkshire.
Madam Harris, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So on September 11th, 2001, I was actually only 2 years old. So I don't have a solid memory of 9/11 attacks. The way I found out was actually my parents. I came home from kindergarten and they had talked to us about it, just kind of a brief overview of 9/11. And I asked kind of where was I when it happened, because I don't remember. And my dad told me I was in the living room. We were both watching the TV and it was on. So I watched it, but I don't really remember it.
What was your immediate reaction when you learned about the attacks?
Like I said, I learned about it in kindergarten, so I was really young and I was really confused, I think was my first reaction when I found out about it, because it didn't make sense to me why someone would do something like that. And then it was kind of explained further by my dad later in the day when I asked about it, but the first reaction was confused.
Do you have a memory that's most vivid?
Probably seeing it for the first time and really remembering seeing it for the first time, because it's just so horrific to watch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Mrs. Dalzell. I teach 8th grade language arts.
Hi, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was in 4th grade, and I remember I was like a crossing guard for the elementary school, so I had to get to school early to help people cross the street, like held a stop sign. And I was really stressed because my dad was watching the news and I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, Dad, I'm gonna be late. And he was really stressed out because he was watching what was happening on the news. But he got in the car and he kind of told me a little bit about what happened. And so I was just totally, it was not on my radar at all. So I was really surprised by it and didn't really understand what was going on, but felt bad that I rushed my dad out of the living room for that.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks and what memories are most vivid?
I remember being really afraid. My mom was out of town. She was across the country visiting my grandparents. And so I remember at recess, kids talking about how we were going to have to move to relatives in other countries to protect us. And I was like, my mom's not even home. So just remember being confused and scared. And yeah, just needing to come home and try to process that with my family.
Most vivid memory?
Probably standing at recess and having a kid tell me, you're gonna have to move to Europe to stay safe. And I was like, my mom's not even home. And then, so I would say that, and then coming home and actually looking at some of the footage online on TV with my dad.
Thank you.
I am Drew Rock. I am one of the 3 school counselors here. I work with students at the end of the alphabet, last names Q through Z.
Mr. Rock, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001? How did you find out about the attacks?
I was a junior in high school in AP chemistry. An announcement came over the loudspeaker and they told us that a plane had crashed into one of the towers. But the way they had explained it to us, or the way it kind of sounded, was that like a wing might have clipped the building and there wasn't any major damage. And then, it was a double block period. So hour and a half after all of that happened, we move on to our next class. And I had U.S. history, and they had CNN playing on the TVs in all of the classrooms, and that's when we really saw the devastation for what it actually was, that a plane had actually gone directly into the building and that it was bigger than just an accident.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
It's shock and awe, and I think afterwards, so I grew up in Maryland, and we were about 10 miles from NSA, the National Security Agency. So there was kind of a lot of fear around that area too, as far as, now that this has happened, is this area at risk? And schools had closed for, I'd say, the rest of the week. And there was just this eerie quiet, even going outside to, go grocery shopping or anything like that. People were just quiet, solemn, didn't really know what to say. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name's Brenda Doyle, and I teach 6th grade science.
Ms. Doyle, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was teaching 4th grade at Oak Creek Elementary School. I found out about the attacks through email. So I received an email that had said that there had been an attack, a plane had hit the World Trade Center. I had a room with another teacher. We shared a room. And when our students left the room to go to a unified arts class, we turned the TV on and we saw the second tower get hit. So it was a weird day because we were at school. We weren't allowed to talk about it with any of the students. But throughout the day, students kept leaving. So parents were allowed to come pick their students up from school. And so by the end of the day, we had very few students left.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I just remember the shock of it, watching it and seeing it on TV. My dad was like, get gas. on your way home from work because he wasn't sure what was going to happen. And so he was like, make sure you have gas in case that's going to be a problem. And it was just, we stayed glued to the TV then that night.
Do you have a memory that's most vivid?
I think just watching all the people and the ash and people walking over the bridge as they were trying to leave New York, that's what sort of stays with me when I think about that time and what I saw on TV.
Thank you.
All right, hi, my name is Mr. Hughes. I teach here at Berkshire. I teach art.
Mr. Hughes, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I had been married for literally 1 month to the day, and I was working at a golf course. I was just in college, and the boss came and told us that there had been attacks, and he was like, if you want to go home, you go home, but he didn't want us to go home. He wanted us to keep on working.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Everyone around us was like freaking out, like wondering what was going on, and like really wanted to know, but the boss didn't want us to go home, and so we just kind of had to wait for a couple hours till the end of our shift. And so when I went home, then my wife was already at the apartment, and we were just like glued to TV then for the rest of the night.
Most vivid memory?
Just shock and awe of just seeing everything. Yeah, the buildings collapsed, people in panic, people dying, you know, rescuers, like proud of our rescuers that were going in, the first responders.
Thank you.
Carol Castle, Building Secretary.
Ms. Castle, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was working in the school office of an elementary school in New Jersey, and our school photographer came in and told me that 2 planes had hit the Twin Towers.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Fear, and just a heightened sense of nervousness throughout the school, a lot of activity, and it was my daughter's first day of high school, so I was anxious to get her with me.
And your most vivid memory?
Seeing the towers fall.
Jared Cutshall, 6th grade science.
Mr. Cutshall, what were you doing on September 11, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
September 11th, 2001, I was teaching 3rd grade at Tyler Run Elementary on the other side of the district. I had just that morning taken my 3rd graders to their special. I don't remember what it was, PE, art, something, and dropped my students off. I walked back into my classroom, sat down at my computer, going to plan something for the next week. I opened up the internet, and up popped the Yahoo homepage or whatever it was on the internet at that time. And there was a headline news that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. So at that point, I clicked the link and read that they were still unsure, then turned on the news, and the details came out that this wasn't just a plane crash, but rather a terrorist attack. So that's how I found out that day.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
My immediate reaction was just a stomach drop, you know, like the world had come to an end. This overwhelming like grief and sadness and confusion, sort of like top down, flowing down. And then I found that one of my coworkers' daughters was working in the Trade Center at that time. So then it sort of switched from thinking about myself to fear for others and who's safe and how could we get Cassie out of there or help her or even find out that she was safe. So my reaction was sort of mixed. It started worrying about myself and the grief that I had, and then moved to thinking about others.
What memory is most vivid?
Most vivid memory was just trying to protect these little kids, these elementary school kids, and not let rumors start when they began to find out about it. And then going home and sitting down in my living room and just watching the events unfold and trying to figure out where the world would go from there.
Thank you.
Hi there, kids. I'm Spencer Murphy. I'm a 7th grade science teacher at Berkshire Middle School, and I am on Team 704.
Mr. Murphy, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, guys, because I was actually in middle school myself. I was in 6th grade, and what was interesting now is back then we don't understand, we didn't have phones. So it was really interesting because we didn't really have access to to any information other than through the TV, and our TVs weren't on in our school building. So we actually had an announcement over the speakers for our teachers to check their email, and then we were kind of left in the dark, and then rumors kind of starting to spread between the kids, and it was pretty scary not really knowing what's going on because no one really told us exactly what had happened.
So what was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Yeah, I would just say fear. Fear because you're not really sure. Like I said, you guys have phones now, so you would kind of know exactly what had happened. We were left in the dark, and a lot of parents came and picked up their kids. My vivid memory is just kind of looking outside and being afraid because we really just didn't know what was going on. Eventually, we were told what happened, but I was in 6th grade, so I was 11 years old, and you don't really know exactly what's going on. You can't really grasp that moment. But I look back now, especially as a middle school teacher, how important that was historically. And how kind of that lack of information was super scary to a middle school kid.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Good morning. My name is Dana Yakum. I'm one of the school counselors at Berkshire Middle.
Hi, Ms. Yakum. What were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So on that date, I actually was at home. I just had my 2nd child, and so I took a year off from teaching. So I was getting ready to play tennis, actually. And so I had my son, and I turned the TV on and saw the attacks. I felt that it was a little surreal and hard to believe.
So your immediate reaction you've covered, but what memories most vivid from that day?
My memory that's most vivid, I had a daughter also, and she was at school, and I just remember wanting to have her with me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mr. Dills, and I teach 8th grade language arts.
Mr. Dills, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So before I went to college, I was 18 years old, and I was building houses in Cincinnati. So our workday started around 6:30. So I was at work. I was actually up in the rafters of a house when the radio was on, and the music broke, and the radio was telling us all about what had just happened. A plane had crashed into one of the towers, and then we just kind of all stopped and listened to the radio for a while, and then kind of went back to work. We didn't really know what was going on, and it wasn't until I got off work at like 2:30, 3 o'clock that I realized what the full scope of what had happened.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
Shock, for sure. It's definitely just had a hard time processing what was going on. I called my dad to talk to him. I think, my immediate reaction was to reach out to family and just kind of see how everyone was doing and process what was going on. I didn't really, again, fully understand what exactly was happening until the president, which is something I do remember, President Bush addressing the nation towards the end of the evening, and just heartbroken for people who suffered, and shocked for our nation.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Waddell, and I am the band director here at Berkshire Middle School.
Ms. Waddell, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
So on September 11th, 2001, I was a junior in high school, and I was in math class, and I remember they came over the announcements and they let everyone know that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. And that was kind of all they said. They didn't really know what was going on yet. I think at first everybody kind of thought it was an accident. And so my math teacher, I was in math, and he said, oh, that sounds really bad, but we're just gonna try to keep going and keep our minds off of it. So he kind of kept teaching, and then as the day went on, we started realizing that it wasn't an accident, and TVs were getting turned on in all the classes, and we were sort of just watching things unfold, and that was pretty much it.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
So I think, like I said, immediately we kind of thought it was an accident, and there was just a lot of confusion. And then once we figured out what was going on, it was just why, that's all you can think of, especially at the age that I was at. Just didn't really understand, and scared.
Your most vivid memory?
I would say probably the days after it, honestly, and just kind of everybody being really quiet in the halls and people trying to kind of come together a little bit more and just be united, and that was actually nice to see. So I think that's probably what I remember most, is the days after.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Quinlan. I teach German 1.
Mr. Quinlan, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
I was teaching 8th grade level 1 Spanish at Carr Middle School in Dublin. I found out about the attacks when the assistant principal knocked on the door, asked me to step outside, and let me know that there appeared to be some sort of attacks that were taking place. He mentioned the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers had been hit by planes. It seemed that there were other attacks possible, and we didn't know what was happening. He asked us to stay inside the classrooms, keep the students in the same room, not turn on any TVs or radios, and he would advise further. So it was kind of up in the air. We didn't know what to expect, and a little fearful, didn't know what was going on.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I think my immediate reaction was just fear and sadness, I think kind of simultaneously. The most vivid memory is, I think, the image of the Twin Towers shortly before they collapsed. Pretty shocking, to say the least.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Miss Hain. I teach 6th grade English here at Berkshire.
Ms. Hain, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, and how did you find out about the attacks?
September 11th, 2001, I was 15 years old, so I was a sophomore in high school. I was in home ec class when the first plane hit, and I remember teachers talking to each other in between classes, and then my teacher ended up pulling a TV on wheels over to our class and turned the news broadcast on, and we actually, right when we flipped on is when the second plane was going into the tower, so we actually witnessed the second plane.
What was your immediate reaction to the attacks, and what memories are most vivid?
I guess my immediate reaction was probably just numb and very curious. We had no clue really what was going on. And then I just remember the rest of the day, a lot of people panicked and a lot of parents came and picked their kids up from school. And then going home that night and talking to my parents, and that was all we did the rest of the night, was watch news broadcasts and the TV about everything that was going on.
Most vivid memory?
Most vivid memory, gosh, the most vivid memory would be watching that second plane hit the towers while I'm sitting in school, in class, which is crazy to think that even happened.
Thank you.